Got it. The reason he was called Rocks was because he threw giant rocks at people. There you go. Figured it out. And you know what? You're laughing at me, but wait until we finally get the flashback about God Valley and Roxy Xebec picks up a giant rock, maybe one of the mountains at God Valley. Maybe he just rips the whole mountain apart and throws it at Roger or Garp or somebody. You just wait. That's the reason, Roxy Xebec. Although I guess Rocks would be his family name, Xebec would be his given name. His entire family threw rocks at things. There you go. You just wait for it. That seems like an Oda pun. Maybe if that's not like the main ability, how Rocks fought, he might just throw that in there just for the sake of his name being Rocks, right? Okay. So in the last chapter, chapter 1145 of One Piece, man, we're getting really high up there with these numbers, right? These numbers are getting huge. It's crazy. Just look at some other manga that have lasted a really long time. Like what? Like Naruto made it up to chapter 700. Bleach was only like 686. You know, chapter 1145. Damn. Anyway, we get a little bit of Loki's backstory. Just a little touch of a backstory, and it's actually kind of hitting a little bit of a nerve with Loki. He actually was talking to Luffy about the whole Shanks thing, and he's like, hey, I know where Shanks is. That part is true. I wasn't lying about that, but hey, I'm still chained up, so we're going to have to take a rain check on that until you actually let me go. Then I'll tell you about Shanks. But Loki does see something in Luffy, and that is that he is inspired by this man, Shanks, okay? And that also makes Loki recall something from his own childhood about a certain pirate that he looked up to back in the day. But even before all that, when he was just talking with Hiruden and Gerd about who attacked him, the Gods Knights, Hiruden was like, oh, you must have pissed some of the government off when you were off, you know, gallivanting around the world causing havoc. That must have made the world government angry, and they sent the Gods Knights at you. And Loki was like, oh, don't be an idiot, Hiruden. If I would have went so far to actually meet these guys, the Gods Knights, I would have been king of the world already. So it's very interesting. Loki chose to use the words, I'd be king of the world by now. Because, remember, Luffy wants to be king of the pirates. He barely mentions it anymore, but he does in fact want to be the king of the pirates. A lot of other people right now want to be king of the pirates, which was basically a term that kind of came about because of Roger finding the One Piece, right? But way back in the day, before Luffy, before Roger's era, when he was really on top, it was Roxy Xebec that was on top. And he didn't want to be king of the pirates. Oh, no, no, no. In fact, an argument could be made he was kind of already king of the pirates. He was a really, really strong dude. But no, he wanted to be king of the world. And what does that exactly mean, king of the world? Does it mean he actually knew about the empty throne? That he actually knew about Emu's existence and the Gorosei and what they really are and all that kind of stuff? He wanted to go to Marijois, kill everybody there, take over the empty throne, and actually rule the world? Or was it more of just like a 1980s cartoon villain, like Skeletor Mumra, kind of like, I want to rule the world? You know, which one was it? I'm not really sure, right? But king of the world, that's a bold claim to try to aim for, right? And I guess that ambition is something that Loki certainly has. He said he wanted to end the world, which, you know, I guess if you can end the world, you can also be king of the world. I mean, if you have the power to destroy it, you have the power to rule it, I suppose. But no, this was something that inspired him from a very young age, because we get the flashback when Loki was a child and he met Roxy Xebec. We don't exactly know where this meeting took place. It seems to be taking place on Elbaph because Loki was a child, and I don't know if he left the island very much back then. There are some humans in the background, which we can assume are members of Rocks' crew. Rocks also says in the flashback, we only see the silhouette of him. We don't know what he looks like yet, but this is the most dialogue we've ever got from him yet. There was one line of dialogue during the God Valley flashback at Egghead where I think Rocks was like, let's get him, boys! You know, like something like that, but this was the most dialogue we've really ever gotten from him, so kind of overlooked that in the review, just how, like, significant it is. We now get a handle for his personality. So, I don't know what kind of voice we're going to give Rocks. I'll give it a shot here. Just really gruff, kind of angry sort of man. Let's go go with that. I didn't come here to meet a whelp like you. Stop making me repeat myself. Kind of sounds like my Kaido, but then again, Kaido learned everything about what it was to be a Yonko from Rocks, so it's kind of fitting, right? Okay. So he says, I didn't come here to meet a whelp like you, implying that, like, Rocks is visiting Elbaph. He went to Elbaph to meet maybe a really strong giant, maybe to see King Harald, maybe to see Yorl. I'm going to go, Yorl would have been, Yorl would have been dead by this point. Jarl would still be alive, though. Dory and Broggy would be gone at this point, right? Because, like, Dory and Broggy started fighting 100 years ago, and Loki was born well after that they started their battle. So how old is Loki here? We don't know. I like to think he's around the same age as Colin, which would be around 20. You also got to remember that God Valley occurred 38 years ago. That's when the Rocks crew split up, so it had to have occurred before that. So if Loki was born 63 years ago, and he's around Colin's age, that would put it around 43 years ago right now. So that would be about 5 years previous to God Valley, and so the Rocks crew was sort of at full power at this point. Like, this was their era 100%, right? Okay. Tangent, you know me. Who's ready for a teching tangent, all right? But no, seriously, this has nothing to do with Loki or Rocks, or kind of with Rocks, but I want to bring this up to you because it's been something that really, I'm probably going to make a dedicated video about it because it is something that's crazy to me. All right, in the review, I mentioned very briefly, what if it was Rocks' crew that killed Brook's crew, the Rumbar Pirates, all right? I'm just going to throw it out there, then we'll get right back on track because I got a lot of other stuff to talk about here, okay? What would happen if Brook ever met the person that killed him? How do you think Brook would respond to that? And this, I'm probably going to do a whole video on it, but, like, let's say Brook met a person. Like, what if it was Rocks' crew, and it was Wang Ji was the one that used the poison arrows that wiped out all the Rumbar crew, including himself? How do you respond to the dude that literally killed you? And it's like, I killed you. It's like, yo ho ho ho, I'm back. Boom! Like, would Brook kill him? Would Brook be angry? Would Brook have like a Thorfinn moment from Vinland Saga? Like, Wang Shi! You know, how would Brook respond if he met the dude that killed him and all of his friends? If that dude was still alive. All right, tangent over. Interesting hypothetical. Let me know your comments below, and I'm probably going to talk about that in a video. All right. Anyway, so that was their era back in the day, right? So, fun thing about Loki, he still has the bandage over his eye during this meeting with Rocks. So he had the bandages in the flashback with Hyrudin when Harald was talking to both of his sons. You can't even say that it was the battle with Roxy Xebec that left Loki's eyes damaged or something, or he covered them up. No, it was even before that, okay? So for some reason, from when Loki was a child, he decided to cover up his eyes. Might have been some other reason, maybe some other injury, or maybe there's no injury at all. He's just covering them up for his own reason or whatever. But, there it is. I just wanted to bring that up there, too. So he's like, I want to join your crew, Rocks, in the same way that Luffy asked Shanks over and over again to join his crew. Same way that Colin kept asking Shanks to join the Red Hair crew. Same thing that Pedro asked Roger to join his crew way back at Zoe in the day. Same thing. Except, yeah, Rocks was a little bit more of the tough love kind of, parent in this regard. And by tough love, I mean, took out a sword and stabbed Loki, like, a lot. And it was just like, oh, okay, you want to go, kid? You want to be on my crew? All right. And then he stabs Loki, and yeah, that fight didn't end very well. Whitebeard was also there in the past, Edward Newgate, and he was even like, hey, Rocks, damn, you didn't have to use a blade on him. Jeez, you didn't have to stab a child. And he's like, shut up. I don't care. This is what I do. I'm Rocks. I'm Roxy Xebec. I throw rocks at people, and occasionally I stab children. It's what I'm doing. It's what he's all about. All right. So this little flashback ends. Loki is kind of recalling this, and is like, man, oh, that's a memory. And he's like, I was born in the wrong era. Garp kind of mentioned this when we first learned about Rocks way back at the Reverie, when Garp was talking to Hina and all the Vice Admirals about him, and he mentioned that if Rocks, or the power of the Rocks crew were to revive in the current era, that the Marines wouldn't be able to stop them, the current pirates wouldn't hold a candle. Like, the idea is the way that Garp talks about this crew is that they were like a natural disaster level of power, like even more than Kaido. Remember, Kaido was the cabin boy on Roxy Xebec's crew. Kaido was the apprentice pirate. He was their version of Buggy. All right. Now, granted, Kaido was like 15 at the time, but he was also like a super soldier that wiped out an entire army. Basically, he's essentially Douglas Bullett's backstory. It's the same kind of backstory, right, for the Vodka Kingdom, right? So he was already pretty powerful. A lot of people also brought that up, the fact that Kaido was allowed in Rocks' crew and Kaido was only around like 15. But we also have Loki, who probably would have been older than Kaido. But remember the way that giants age. He was equivalent to probably like an 8-year-old kid at the time, right? So I guess even Kaido at that point, I'm pretty sure would have been able to defeat Loki. Loki is crazy strong right now, but back then he was a kid, and so Rocks was stronger, and Kaido was probably stronger, and all that kind of stuff, right? In fact, at that point, how old is Kaido again? Kaido was like 58, right? So if this was like 43 years ago, this might have been like, this could have occurred like the year right after Kaido was recruited by Rocks D Xebec. I think the idea is that he ended up on Hachinosu like a little bit before he actually joined, and then one day Charlotte Linland was like, hey, Kaido, Rocks is shipping out, we could use your help, and then that's when he went, kind of something like that. But yeah, he was 21 during God Valley. So Loki was born in the wrong era, as he said. And I think this has a lot to do with the way that the pirates now are not the same kind of pirates that existed in Rocks' era. Shanks being a perfect example of this, okay? Shanks learned from Roger, all right? Now, Roger, keep in mind he was still a pirate, all right? I'm sure there were plenty of civilian casualties on the hands of Goldie Roger. I'm sure a lot of people died by the hands of Roger, right? But he wasn't the same as Rocks D Xebec. He had morals. He had some ethics. I don't think Roger would have taken out his sword and stabbed a child with it, all right? So at least Shanks was raised a little bit better than, like Loki would have been if he would have ended up on Rocks' crew, okay? So those were the pirates back then. It was just like super hardcore and all about power. Power was the name of the game back then, 100%. Not to say Shanks is weak, not to say that any of the other pirates in the current era are weak. It's just that maybe they have a little bit more compassion and understanding. Like, whenever Colin or Luffy kept bugging Shanks to join his crew, he didn't, resort to, physical violence. He didn't resort to, beating the shit out of Luffy to show him that you do not belong on a pirate ship, kid. Stay here in your little windmill village and drink your milk. And, maybe one day when you're big and strong, you go out to sea, right? No, Shanks, I want to go with you. Boo! It's like, none of that. That's not the way Shanks was raised by Roger, and that's definitely not the way Shanks treats others, okay? But that is the way Rocks treats others, and we don't even know about Rocks' backstory. We don't even know what the dude looks like yet. We just have a vague outline of him. He has very spiky hair. We know that much, right? He has the Will of D, of course. We don't know if he has a Devil Fruit ability. Could be the Yami Yami no Mi, because there's obviously connections to Blackbeard there. But once we find out more about Rocks D Xebec, and we might even learn about his backstory, it might even be a situation where, eventually we're going to learn about Roger's backstory when he was a kid and why he wanted to be a pirate. What if Roger was inspired by Rocks? Because I guess the idea is that Rocks would have been, I guess we don't know how old Rocks is, but he was probably at least 10, 15 years older than Roger, his senior most certainly, right? So maybe Roger, strangely enough, was inspired by Rocks at a young age, and that's why he went out to sea to become a pirate, not to join Rocks' crew, but just oh, he's a pirate, I want to be a pirate too. Could it be possible Rocks and Roger could have been friends growing up? Not impossible, I don't think. I think Rocks is older. Roger would be in his 70s if he was still alive. I think he'd be 77 if he was alive right now. Maybe Rocks was 5 to 10 years older and he would be in his 80s, okay? But it's possible Roger could have maybe viewed him as even an older brother type figure. And then they went out to sea and they kind of ended up on different paths. Ooh, what if we do an inverse of Luffy and Ace kind of thing, two brothers that go out to sea, but they ended up very different from one another. Or if not actually related by blood, they were just connected by just oh, you're my older brother, you saved me from a giant dinosaur or something like that. Who knows, right? So I feel Loki is probably feeling a little bit, maybe not necessarily jealous, but kind of just man, Luffy, you had it easy. The pirate that you looked up to didn't stab you in the stomach, you know? The pirate you looked up to, sure, Shanks did not accept Luffy on his crew back when Luffy was 7, but he gave him words of encouragement. He gave him his straw hat and was like, hey, one day I know you're going to be a great pirate, Luffy, and I can't take you on my ship right now. It's just too dangerous. You're just not ready. But you train with that devil fruit and you get stronger, and here's my hat, and one day when you become a great pirate, you come and you give that pirate hat back to me. You give that straw hat back to me, kind of thing, right? And so Loki's probably sitting there eating his food all banged up from getting shredded by Shamrock. And Loki's probably sitting there like, man, I wish I had a positive male role model in my life like that. It's just like his positive role model, at least he thought, is the guy he looked up to. He just got shivved in the freaking stomach, you know? Loki's like, man, born in the wrong era, let me tell you. We should do a, once we learn a little bit more about Loki, I wouldn't be against doing a what-if video on, like, what if Loki would have joined Rocks' crew back in the day. I just don't think we know enough about Rocks or Loki to talk about that particular, like, parallel universe timeline, but maybe someday I'll talk about that, right? So I think if nothing else, Loki and Luffy can do a little bit of bonding here, you know? Maybe Loki's not going to tell him about Shanks yet, or maybe he will. Maybe Luffy will actually sit down and tell him all these stories about Shanks and why he looks up to him and everything like that. And Loki's going to be like, all right. You want to know where Shanks is? All right, I'll tell you. You don't have to take off. I guess you did free me from the tree, technically. I'll tell you where he's at. I tell you where he's going, which Loki probably learned about that from Shanks when he visited Elbaph recently. Shanks stopped by to visit Loki, maybe told him about where he was heading or what he, maybe not necessarily where he was going specifically, but like what Shanks' goal was next. In fact, we know, this is kind of obvious now that I'm thinking about it, but Shanks did say to Ben Beckman, it's like, hey, it's time for us to go get the One Piece. It's time to go finally claim it. You know, after all these years, it's time to live up to Roger's legacy and all that stuff, right? What if that's what Shanks told Loki? What if Shanks told Loki, hey, yeah, I'm going to go get the One Piece after this. It's time. It's time someone brought an end to all this. You know, I'm going to do it, right? So what if Loki is the one that tells Luffy, hey, red-haired Shanks that you look up to, he's going after the One Piece. He's heading to Laugh Tale right now. And then Luffy's kind of like, oh, shit, he is? Okay. I mean, we were going there already, but, like, wait, he's going right now? Man, we gotta hurry up, because, you know, Luffy looks up to Shanks. He wants to know what's going on with Shanks. He wants to see Shanks again and talk to him and all that. Luffy still wants to find the One Piece. That is his goal. He wants to find the One Piece and be king of the pirates, and nobody, doesn't matter who it is, even if it's Shanks, Luffy's gonna want to beat him. Luffy's gonna be like, no, I'm not just gonna let Shanks get the One Piece. He's like, oh, he's going after the One Piece? Oh, okay, well, I wanted it, but, you know, I guess he is the apprentice under Roger, so I guess if anybody should get it, it should be him. No, bullshit. Luffy's going to be like, he's going after the One Piece? Guys, get the Sunny, we're going. You know, Elbaph is only a 30-chapter arc. We're going after the One Piece right now. It might be actually something as simple as that, because I can't really think of anywhere else. I mean, maybe Lodestar. Lodestar is kind of like the only buffer right here between both, you know, where they can maybe all meet up or something, and then after that, they can move on to Laugh Tale. It's possibly that Shanks could be going to Lodestar. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so Loki is, well, here's a question. Where do you think Loki's story is going after Elbaph? Because obviously we saw him in the mural. Loki's going to be very relevant to this. This is not a character that's just going to be Elbaph exclusive, and then after Elbaph wraps up, you know, Hyruden becomes the new king, and Loki is the prince that is now beloved by everybody. He got his honor back like Zuko or some shit. And it's like, all right, Straw Hats, good luck on your way to the One Piece. We're going to stay here. It's not going to happen like with the Scabbards and Momonosuke at Wano, right? Loki is relevant to this endgame of this story now, right? Like, this is happening, okay? I'm not saying Loki's gonna join the Straw Hats. We're not doing that. I don't think he would fit on the boat. But I could see Loki being, you know, like, okay, I have my own ship. I'm going out to sea, probably going to be with the new Giant Warrior Pirates, maybe using their ship, right? With Hyruden and Rode and Goldberg and Gerd and Stanson and everybody, right? And they're going to be on their way. Or maybe if because it is kind of being set up a little bit that Hiruden is going to be the new king. I'm feeling like this is like Odin, the younger years with Hiruden a little bit. Maybe Hiruden will lose an eye during this arc at some point. He'll get the cool eye patch. He'll be the eye patch pirate. So maybe he goes to be the new king of Elbaph, and then it's because they need a king. You know, they don't have a king right now. They have no sovereign. And then maybe Loki takes over the mantle of new giant warrior pirates, and then he's the captain, and then he goes out to sea, and he journeys with the Straw Hats to Lodestar or Laugh-Tale, and is part of this big epic war or something like that. And it's kind of up in the air right now what the deal with Rocks is. Like, is Rocks still alive? Is he going to show back up again? Does he have some crazy ability? We don't really know because it's One Piece. But I'll tell you what, if Rocks is still alive and still kicking and still can fight, Loki has to encounter him at one point. He's just like, hey, remember back when you stabbed me? Rocks is like this 95-year-old guy. He's just like, I stab a lot of people. What are you talking about? Oh, shit, you got big. Yep. Takes out Ragnir and just brings down the hammer. Oh, dude, that would be wild. Actually, great parallel there if we have a moment where Luffy and Shanks need to clash, and then boom, Loki and Rocks clash. Or if Rocks is unavailable for being dead, we can have Blackbeard be part of that, because Blackbeard might be the son of Roxy Xebec or his nephew, or maybe just inheriting his will. Either way, we could have Loki fight against Blackbeard, but then again, Luffy's supposed to really fight Blackbeard, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to go with this, but it is an interesting backstory that we're connecting Roxy Xebec. I did not expect Roxy Xebec to even be really mentioned or super relevant here in this arc. You kind of just expect anything in One Piece. You know, Oda can throw anything at us at any given time, but it's like, oh yeah, I mean, the fact that giants live so long, I guess it would make sense that Rocks could be involved in all this, because his era was a long time ago. 38 years ago, God Valley is when he got, you know, wiped out and separated and everything like that, and all the crew went off to do their separate things. But the crew was, you know, up and running and very powerful and very threatening for well over a decade, if not longer before that, right? Okay, so it's important to keep in mind. Like, remember, going back to Brook again, when Brook was at the Sabaody Archipelago and they were eating at Shaki's Ripoff Bar, they mentioned Roger, and Brook, you know, he was a little bit out of the loop. So he's like, Roger. Yeah, like 50-ish years ago, I remember there was like a rookie pirate named Roger. He was kind of making a big stir in the New World, but that's all I really knew about him, right? He was not the king of the pirates yet. The person that Brook would recognize as the pirate king, as the most dangerous pirate. Like if Nami or somebody or Chopper went up to Brook and was like, hey, Brook, who was the strongest pirate back in your day? Because it wasn't Roger yet. Brook would undoubtedly say, it's like, oh, it would have been Roxy Xebec. You didn't want to cross that guy back then. He killed me. Oh, shit. It's like, yeah, well, you know, I got better. It's like, oh, damn. The deep Brook lore. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, really interesting stuff here. We're learning a lot of stuff about Loki and Roxy Xebec and some other characters along the way. Not really sure if Shamrock's going to pop back into Elbaph and if he's going to be relevant here. I thought that, you know, Luffy and Loki are both going to run into Shamrock and, like, tag team battle him or something. He might warp back in. I mean, you have the Abyss right there. He can just zip back to Marijois, warp back to Elbaph. Not a big deal for him. We'll see where that goes. But, yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching 101 signing out. Night, everybody.